At the beginning of summer, not far from our town, a visiting circus pitched its tents. I came across their posters several times, but to be honest, they did not excite any interest in me. The program included the standard acts: acrobats, fire swallowers, trained animals, and of course clowns. Everything was the same as everyone else's. The only difference was that they gave the performance exclusively outdoors and exclusively at night. Maybe they wanted to impress the audience in this way. I don't know. In any case, I was not impressed. However, my 7-year-old daughter, when she saw the poster, got terribly excited. "Daddy, Daddy, the circus. Let's go, Daddy, let's go," she pleaded. "Honey," I told her, "we went to the circus back in the spring. You're not going to see anything new at this one." "But Daddy," my daughter said, "there's nothing new. Look, it says here that every number has a surprise, and we haven't seen it yet." Well, a circus is a circus, I decided. The show started at 12 at night. Of course, that's pretty late for a little girl, but if she asks me to go, I can't say no. We'd see what surprises there were. So at the beginning of 12, I fed my daughter a late dinner, and then we got in the car and went on our way. The circus tents were on the very outskirts of town, on land that has been divided for years but is nominally municipal land. God knows how these circus people managed to get permission to be there and to conduct commercial activity. Here we've already seen the lights, so we'll be there soon. I decided to leave the car closer to the road and walk the rest of the way on foot, not far, about 200 meters. At the entrance to the circus area, we were met by a woman ticket taker. She sold us 2 tickets, wished us lots of smiles, and to enjoy the show properly. We went further and saw the hall. It was a small fenced-in area with several rows of chairs for the audience and a makeshift stage in the center. Although it was decorated with various posters and flowers, it was obvious that it had been hastily built. Lanterns of different colors were burning around, circus music was playing, nothing unusual. But there was one moment that struck me. The hall was packed with people. Some were already sitting in their seats, others were merrily hanging around, studying the situation. I looked at them and couldn't believe it. Were they all residents of our city? They looked like normal people, but there was something not normal about them. I couldn't figure out what. I started to look, but my daughter pulled me by the hand. She looked very happy and interested, her eyes shining like flashlights that illuminated everything around her. Finally, a man appeared on the stage. He announced that the performance would start in exactly 1 minute and asked for seats. Since the ticket had a free seat, we just took the ones closest to us, which turned out to be the best, the first row, right in front of the stage. The first number was the acrobat Adele. For a minute the light went out, and when it turned on again, the very acrobat appeared before us. Contrary to all norms and stereotypes, it was not a young girl. It was a dry old woman in a brightly colored, tight-fitting costume. Wow, I've never seen anything like it. The music started playing and the old woman acrobat began to rotate her arms and legs. It seemed that all her joints could rotate 360 degrees. But of course I was well aware that it was just a trick, perhaps a light game. Toward the end, she turned her head on its axis, bowed and walked away. The audience began to clap, and I glanced at my daughter. She was clapping too, and seemed to like it. Well, the main thing is that she wasn't scared. The second number was some fierce arsonists of everything and everything, who set fire to a gentleman's hat, but he extinguished it dashingly. Then the singer, a 100-kilogram girl of 14 years old, dressed in an outfit of ostrich feathers. And finally, the highlight of the program was announced: Smiling Clown. He came on stage. A clown like a clown, a bright red wig, a fake nose, ridiculous clothes, and a smile painted from ear to ear. The makeup was so detailed that even the smile's teeth were in place. He started laughing loudly and the audience immediately picked up on it. They clapped and laughed along with the clown, and he added some crazy dancing to this cacophony as well. I looked at my daughter. She was laughing and clapping along with everyone else. Suddenly he stopped abruptly and everyone fell silent. Then the clown spoke. "Ladies and gentlemen, the Smiling Clown welcomes you. I want the smiles to stay on your faces for the rest of the evening, and I'm willing to do anything to make it so." The audience clapped, whistled. Every face literally lit up with a smile. The clown spoke again. "And for the next act, I'm going to need an assistant that I'll pick from the audience. So, who's willing?" You look like you haven't slept in a week." Staggering, I walked outside. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The circus left last week. So where were we yesterday? Completely shattered, I walked back home. I looked into my daughter's empty room, and I sobbed. My own helplessness was even more depressing. I thought about how Amelia had been stolen right out from under my nose and I'd let it happen. I sat in a dumb stupor for hours until I heard a knock on the door. My heart jumped for joy, but when I opened it, it crashed. Standing on the doorstep was just the mailman. He said he had a promotional postcard for me. He put it in my hand and quickly disappeared. When I looked at the card, my stomach twisted and a lump rose in my throat. I couldn't breathe. On the card was a picture of my daughter. She had a short haircut, but that wasn't the worst part. Instead of arms and legs, she had dog limbs sewn on. She stood on a circus stage, surrounded by those very same acrobats, a singer in ostrich feathers, and a clown with a smile. And below was the caption, "Meet," the new highlight of the program. A girl dog dancing under the moon. It was a beautiful Viennese night, sheltering the sleeping city, tired from the noisy carnival of the day. The streets flowed quietly between the houses, covered with the silver of the moon. The air was so clear and transparent that it seemed one could reach one's hand up to the stars, shining with a light as thin and sharp as a sword blade. Vienna itself seemed to glow from within with the yellowish glow of the old lanterns. The sad song of a lonely violin sounded from somewhere in the distance. A light, almost insensible breeze stroked the foliage of the trees, which had fallen into sweet repose. This warm nighttime joy penetrated everyone who wanted to feel it. It was also felt in the richly decorated hotel room where the young count and his wife were staying that night. They sat opposite each other. He held her hands and could not take his eyes off her tender, gentle, childlike, naive, and at the same time intelligent and penetrating eyes. What a beautiful, quiet night. And how beautifully the moon illuminates your hair. He took a chestnut strand in his hands and began to play with it. They flow like waterfalls and fall so laconically on your shoulders, he said. The Countess looked down. A slight blush colored her cheeks. She was about to reply, but suddenly she heard a strange noise. "Don't you think? Do you think someone is coming down the corridor?" she asked warily. "Well, why wouldn't someone be walking down there? Maybe it's a maid or a bellhop or someone else making sure everything's in order. Some vague uneasiness comes over me. I don't like the sound of those footsteps. Come on, what's the big deal? Honestly, I don't know, but I feel uneasy. Is it true that?" But he had no time to finish. The door to the room rattled with a mighty bang. It was followed by a second, a third, a fourth. Someone was rushing into the room with such frenzy as is characteristic of a wild beast. At last, the door collapsed. The Count and Countess froze in a terrible, body-crushing fear of those who stood before them. Clowns filled the room. Some of them wore old masks stained with some rusty maroon stains. Others, without masks, smiled unnaturally wide. They were supposed to smile. The bloody, puffy lips did nothing to hide the long, predatory, sharp fangs that protruded forward. Once colorful, but now filthy, tattered caftans hung in rags from lean, muscular bodies. The girl screamed. The Count grabbed his sword and rushed at the night aliens. But the forces were unequal. The Countess, who was huddled in the corner of the bed, could not move her head from the animal horror that bound her whole being. With horror and simultaneous incomprehension of what was happening around her, she watched her husband being torn to pieces alive and immediately devoured by unthinkable, even to the most sick imagination creatures, echoes of the bygone carnival. Suddenly her gaze encountered the look of a predator, the greedy, insatiable look of a clown, thirsty for warm blood. Meanwhile, the maid and concierge were walking down the corridor, discussing matters regarding the rats in the hotel basements. A sudden noise made them run to the room of the gentleman who had arrived in the morning. What was still left of the room's occupants made the maid scream. The predators immediately turned their heads and saw their new victims. The fate of the corridor man was sealed, but the maiden managed to tear off the edge of the dress by which the clown had grabbed her. Out of fear, she flew into the servants' quarters and brought the whole staff of the inn to their feet. People, grabbing torches, hurriedly ran to the floor. Only the remains of the unfortunate saw them on the floor. The clowns had disappeared. The wind blew the window wide open. Since then, on the night after the Viennese Carnival, which falls on the full moon, people disappear in the city.